Hello, Mrs. Sias here with a mini lesson for you on how to design a successful investigation. So in science class, we've been looking at so many cool phenomena. And anytime we're looking at a phenomena, the best way to learn more is to design some investigations. So in class, we had our phenomena and we created our driving question board. Now, our next thing to do is take those driving questions and design investigations to help us answer those questions. So in order to help us do that really well, we are going to be doing a little variables mini lesson today. So the first thing you want to do is think about what's your driving question. Then from there, it's important to start thinking through some of the variables and things that you're going to change. So the first is your independent variable. Your independent variable is what's tested by the scientist. I like to remember it by the independent variable, I change. IV, I change. So here's a sample experiment. Maybe my driving question is that I'm wondering is which ball will bounce higher, a ping pong ball or a tennis ball? In this experiment, my independent variable, the thing that I'm changing, is the type of ball. You also want to think about your dependent variable. Your dependent variable is what you're measuring or observing. This is your data. It's how you're going to get the results of your experiment. So in the same experiment with which ball will bounce higher, I'm going to measure actually how high the ball bounces. And in science, you need to think about tools that you're going to need to collect that data. So I'm going to use a meter stick and I'm going to measure how high each ball bounces. And I'm going to measure it in centimeters too. It's important to think about how you're going to measure it. The next thing to think about is factors held constant. It's important that you make it a really fair test by keeping everything the same except that one independent variable. So it'd be like if you were running in a race and one person got a head start. It wouldn't be a fair test. Or if you were running a race and one person was wearing sneakers and one person was wearing flip-flops, that wouldn't be a fair test either. So I want to make sure that in this experiment, it's a really fair test between which ball bounces higher. And the only thing I'm changing is the type of ball, but everything else I want to keep the same. So I'm going to bounce them both on the same surface. I'm going to bounce them both on the desk. I'm not going to bounce one on the grass and one on the pavement. Same temperature in the room, same person bouncing. I'm going to hold them both at the same height when I bounce them. I'm going to use the same hand to bounce each one so that hopefully it's a really fair test and I can see just which ball bounces higher and not any of these other factors having an influence over them. The last thing you want to think about is the control group. So the control group is the group that's used for comparison. This is a group without the independent variable. So in our sample experiment with the ping pong ball and the tennis ball, figuring out which one goes higher, you actually can't have a control group, which makes control groups a little confusing. This would be like if I had no ball to bounce and I bounced an invisible ball, there wouldn't be anything to measure. It wouldn't really make sense. But a better example would be which fertilizer works better. So if I was fertilizing plants in my garden, maybe I put Scott's fertilizer on one, Miracle-Gro on the other. I'd want a third plant to use as a control group that has no fertilizer, so I can see how a plant grows without any fertilizer. So a control group is when you do not have that variable. You have one group that you're just not treating with that change or that difference. All right, because you're probably pretty interested in the results of this experiment, let's do a quick experiment. So I'm going to drop each one from 50 centimeters, and we're going to see which one bounces higher. Was your prediction right? Have a good one.